G'day everyone, just want to talk about the PX Ranger and possible locations for rocker switches for various 12 volt applications. As most people would know, there isn't a great deal of room on the dash for rocker switches. I have preempted some using some space by putting in a centre roof console from the Department of the Interior. This is a low profile console utilising the centre roof light as standard. Just there. I have two black fisheye map lights which will be used for the kids if they want to do any reading in the back, both with individual switches. I've also retained the front centre light with the security lighting on either side and motion sensors. You can also see an Oricom UHF radio in front, and the gap down the front is where the speaker cover and microphone for the Bluetooth hands-free kit will be going. I did entertain the thought of putting in the rocker switches in this centre bit of the console up here. I just didn't like the idea of having to reach straight up to try and find the switches. I did find by putting the switches there, it also did block a little bit of the rear view mirror vision out, so just something that I came up with. Just a quick look at the dash, just to sort of refresh everyone, or those who've got PX Rangers will obviously already know. As you can see, there's not a great deal of room for any switches. Single switches you could probably get away with, but if you want anything more than two switches in a row, then you're probably a little bit limited. The only option I have seen is people put switches on this panel just above the other little storage pocket over here. But even then, you're probably only restricted to about 4 switches. As you can see, if you just disregard the location of these screws and where the hole's been cut for the moment, my initial thought was to use the pen holder section in front of the automatic gear selector for the rocker switches. The only problem with that is just under here, there's a support bar for the automatic gear selector bar. There's not really much room to be able to cut any of that out for the switches to be able to sit down. So I've sort of just left that for the time being. The option I did come up with was to use a 1.5 mil checker plate, 150 mil long and about 250 mil wide. I got this bent at a sheet metal place. As you can see on the angle, roughly the angles involved. I've tried to get a 45-degree bend at the front. In future, I think I would make this lip probably be about another 5 mil wider, probably about 15 mil all up. About a 45 degree, you've got about 75 mil, then a 90 degree. That's about a 20 mil spacing there, and then roughly a 30 degree, but you can tailor that to the contours yourself. The problem I did notice going back to the console is that there are 3 different angles you've got to worry about. Looking at the console from here, the console wedges out, so it's thinner across here and a little bit wider up here. It also wedges in, so that a lot of the measurements, and again if you have a look at the back of the console that I've made, how much you have to sort of rebate or sort of camber it back in on that part. The other thing with this console is that the high point here also curves to either side, so it dips into both of those sides. So there's those 3 things to consider. Basically I just wanted a flush panel that's easy to get access to without having to lean forward out of your seat. I wanted to initially put 3 switches in with the view of putting 5 to 6 switches in at a later stage. Once I'd made the metal control panel and cut the location out for the first 3 switches, making sure to try and centre it above and below and to the left to the right. I've then used that as a marker to work out where I'm going to cut out of the plastic console itself. Hence this cut mark here. This is larger than the other one, only again because I wanted to preempt putting more switches in later. So this will allow me to put 6 switches in, and as you can see I'm just coming up to the lugs where the pins come through for the center console to actually clip into there. If you just scan back a little bit, the hole over here is for the four-wheel drive and low range selector. I've taken that out. Obviously I've been playing around with the console for the last sort of few days. That's just sitting underneath. What I do plan to do with this control panel is to put a LED strip across the back of it, and just have that wide to any one of the switches that I have on the control panel. And a location down here, I had a look underneath the control panel and there's nothing underneath there, so that will suit a 19mm just push button on off switch. Okay, just before I take the center console out, I'll just talk about the rocker cover switches themselves. I bought these three from FBL Industries. You can find them on eBay or look them up directly online. What I did notice when I got them was that the light switches themselves are slightly larger than the bodies that they're attached to. What this means is if you would put them together just by themselves, they do end up rubbing in between the switches. I didn't think that was the best way of sort of going about things. So what I've done is just made a little spacer, which is about 6mm in width, attached it to one side of one switch and one side of the other switch. Just coloured it in black on top, so if you were to look down on top, all you're going to see is a nice dark area. You're not actually going to see that it's a space in between. And once you put those together, you end up with about a 1mm gap in between each of the switches themselves. So that'll stop any rubbing or friction against the light switches themselves. In regards to the center console comes out really quite easily. It's just held in by a couple of locational lugs. Just work your knife or a flat baited screwdriver around and just work your way around. Pops out as easy as that. And you're basically left with this shell. Now, these screws, as you can see, I've already sort of pre-drilled and organised where I was going to have things. If you look at the control panel itself, I have got a hinge on the back. The only reason I've done this is because when I want to add more switches in later, or if there's a problem with a switch down the track, rather than using pop rivets and having to drill out all the pop rivets and remove the panel by itself, all I've got to do is remove the screws from the front, and then the whole thing will pivot back, so I've got easy access to it. It also means I don't have to have an extra 200 to 300 mil of wiring going to each switch, which you would need if you're going to fix directly to the console, because that's what you'll need if you lift the whole console up and out to be able to get access to it. Now, going back to that switch position that I'm going to use for the push button switch for the LED lighting on the back, if I turn this over, you'll see that apart from a couple of raised bits of plastic, the area is completely free. There's nothing else going across, and if you were to look basically down into this hole here, you'll see that there's nothing underneath to impede it at all. This is the support bar that I was talking about for the automatic gear selector, and this is why I couldn't have the initial idea of just putting it directly into the pen holder gap, and why it's ended up moving forward slightly. Okay, basically I'll put the switches back into the panel. So basically looking at making the hole obviously just wide enough for the clips to push straight into. So locating that and just pushing that straight down. Because I've got the spacers, I do the outside ones first. So that's in like that. And the last one should just slide straight in and clip in. So that's basically what it should look like. 3 switches, all nice and neat. Okay, as you can see, I've got the control panel on. I've got my 3 metal screws fixed on the hinge below, and you can see they're sort of protruding there. They don't interfere with any wiring, so that I don't need to worry about trimming any length off those. As I put this back over, it's just a simple matter of just sliding it all the way to the back. Now, before you put it down, you just got to put the plug back into the selector. It's just a simple push, and hopefully you hear a click. There's the click. Okay, that's all the way back in. Just put the final screws back in here. I made the holes down here a little bit lower so that there's a little bit of tension against it so it doesn't rattle. So you will need to pull this forward a little bit. So that'll screw up like that. I might actually undo this again just so I can show you how far it will hinge back. So once that comes out, that's what I'm aiming for. You've got full access to your switches, and obviously if there's another couple alongside of it, but you don't have to remove the whole panel, and that's pretty much why I put the hinge in there, so I've got easy access. And as you can see, all I really need is at most another 100mm of wiring, rather than probably another 300-400mm if you were trying to take the whole console back out. Alright. There you go. As you can see, just sitting in the seat normally, I'm sitting in back into the chair, and I've still got full access to the switching panel across here. It's easy enough to access all the panels. I think the tread pattern Zinc-Alume matches the ruggedness of the four-wheel drive. It also matches the tread pattern I've got on the back bull bar, and eventually the side steps and rails that I'll be putting in. It is nice and level. I painted it with SLS primer initially, and then a gunmetal hammered finish, just to try and tie in the grey tones to the vehicle rather than that bright shiny Zinc-Alume that it initially came in. All up, the bit of Zinc-Alume was only about $20. Other accessories being the bolts and bits and pieces you could probably get for under $5. Most of the time involved is in getting the angles right and notching it down into the console, but I think for me it gives me a far easier access and a visual idea of where my switches are, just easier than trying to put it anywhere else. So this is just easy enough, an easy option for me. I hope it may give you guys some ideas as to either being able to do the same thing. I have looked at getting the sheet metal place to do these as a routine fold. So if later on I decide to start trying to sell these off, there is that option available there as well. But all in all, a rather easy DIY project, and I think it looks rather good. Alright, well thank you very much for your time.